Hey guys, my name is Beth, and over the next couple of weeks we are going to be exploring in these videos about what it means to keep Jesus at the centre of our lives through keeping focused on him, keeping our eyes on him, and also staying connected with him. And so this week we're going to jump in looking at keeping focused on Jesus and why that's important. But to kick us off, we're going to look at a story from the Gospel of Matthew. Now, Matthew was one of Jesus' 12 disciples, one of his closest followers, and he wrote down loads of stuff that went on in Jesus' life, and that is what makes the book Matthew. And the story we're going to look at is from Matthew 14:22 to 33. Now, this story actually begins at the end of another story. If you're familiar with the story of the feeding of the 5,000, this story takes place just after it. And so the disciples and Jesus have been around many people, thousands of people. Jesus has just done a miracle and fed loads of people. It's been incredible, but probably also really exhausting and tiring. And so Jesus goes off into the mountains to pray and to be alone. And he sends the disciples to cross the lake in a boat. Now, when the disciples are on the lake, the Bible tells us that the wind and the waves get choppy and the boat was being buffeted by waves. Essentially, there's a storm. And just before dawn, when it's still pretty dark, they see a figure walking across the water towards the boat. And at first they think that it's a ghost, but then they actually realise it's Jesus, and Jesus tells them not to be afraid. Now, Peter, who is one of Jesus' disciples, he's a pretty bold guy if you read a lot of stories about him. He says, "If it's you, tell me to come to you on the water." And so Jesus tells him to come. And so he does. He climbs out the boat and he puts his feet onto the water, and he actually manages to take a few steps on the water, which is insane. He's got his eyes on Jesus. He's walking towards him. He's actually doing it. But then he sinks into the water. Now, the reason he sinks is because the Bible tells us that he looked at the waves and he got afraid and then he sank into them. But the good news is that Jesus reached out his hand, picked him back up, and they got in the boat. So all ended well. But you see, Peter had his eyes focused on Jesus. He was focused on him. He was walking towards him. But then the waves around him distracted him and he sank. And the thing is, we can have our own waves in life as well, our own distractions or fears or worries. It could be schoolwork or family issues. It could be illness. It could be actually good things like entertainment or friends or boyfriends or girlfriends that distract us from Jesus. It could be that actually we don't want to go to him because we don't want to think about difficult questions. There are all sorts of different things that can be our waves. But the thing is that these things that distract us, any worries or fears, they can, a bit like the waves for Peter, they can swallow us up. They can consume our thoughts and our actions and our lives. But we're not meant to do that. We're meant to focus on Jesus and keep walking towards him. Now, the interesting thing about this story is that Jesus is kind of famous for saying a particular phrase in this story where he says, "O ye of little faith, why did you doubt?" Now, this comes across as like a bit of a weird thing to say, or potentially a bad thing on Peter's part, that he's got such little faith. But there's another part in the Bible where Jesus says, actually, if you've got faith as small as a mustard seed, and mustard seeds are tiny, then you could tell a mountain to move and it would move. So although Peter's faith is small, it is powerful. And so what I want you to know is that you don't have to feel like you've got everything sorted, like you're the best person with the best kind of relationship with Jesus, or whether you've got the best faith of anyone you know. That doesn't matter. It's about your heart and about just keep setting your eyes on Jesus. And so there's three things really that I want you guys to take away from this. The first is that Peter looked towards Jesus, put his eyes on Jesus in the middle of a storm, whether life is good or bad, easy or difficult, peaceful or chaotic. Keep your eyes on Jesus. Number two, keeping our eyes on Jesus isn't meant to be something complicated. It's simply focusing on him, taking time for him in whatever way that looks like for us through prayer or worship music or reading our Bible, checking in with him a few times a day, making sure that actually our thoughts aren't consumed by things that distract us or worry us, but are consumed by Jesus, that we keep trying to get back on track with that as well. And number three is that in the story, like the water that's surrounding the boat and the waves and water will always be there and will always come and go on that lake that the disciples were in. And in our lives, there'll always be waves that come and go for us too. But the importance is being determined to not let them swallow us up, to know that they're there, but keep focused on Jesus anyway. Because we're meant to live a life in relationship with him, and he wants good things for us and wants us to metaphorically walk on water towards him. And so this week we've also got a bunch of discussion questions and a couple of activities, including some around prayer, for you guys to kind of process some of these things a little bit further. But until next week, I hope you have a good week. Bye.